So welcome to the Snap, Crackle and Pod podcast. Today we're here with Snap's Head of Data Governance, Martin Wiley. Martin, welcome. Great
Thank
to
you very
have
much.
you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's start by hearing a little bit about your background and
Yeah.
also your role at Snap.
Sure, absolutely. So my career spans a little over 25 years. I'm not giving my age away there. And it's all gained within asset management and financial services. I've covered everything from data validation, so data quality, to compliance and risk controls, all through to data visualization and data analytics. All of those are good practices for data governance, which now brings me to Snap as your new head of data governance, promoting everything that is positive about data.
Fantastic. So data governance seems to be getting an awful lot of airtime right now. So you find yourself in a very good place. So definitely right place at the right time. Why does data governance matter, and why is there such a big focus now in 2025?
Yes, it's a very good question. So I think it's really important to understand that data governance has been around since the 1980s. But back in the 1980s, it was very IT-centric. So there was a big focus on creating your data catalogs, having your data security, but again, very IT-centric. Businesses are now starting to realise that to be very data-driven, it's no longer considered IT-centric. It's more of a strategic necessity to help really drive businesses forward, to help businesses become a lot more innovative, which is really key. So if you've only got to look around at the moment, businesses are dealing with unprecedented volumes of data. And that's primarily due to the rise in AI. But you've also got companies that merge, they're acquired, they get taken over. And so again, you've got gargantuan volumes of data that need to be managed. You couple that with an increasingly complex regulatory landscape, such as GDPR, the desire for data governance becomes a bit more of a priority. There's also some other key takeaways with that as well. You've got better tooling than you've ever had now out there with regards to data governance. You've got more of a focus now on sort of decentralized data management. So a lot more companies are starting to look at things, technologies such as blockchain, peer-to-peer, such as like BitTorrent. And so you need to basically ensure that you're scalable as a business and you're very agile as well. And I think the most important thing is that businesses now are starting to understand that to be efficient and have trust in the data, you've got to have good data governance practices in place.
Yeah, and I think there's just a proliferation of data across the organization, right? There's the rise of the sort of SaaS solutions. I think it was one of the reasons we started Snap as a business is
Yes.
what we saw historically. You'd have your single ERP, SAP is one we commonly work with. You'd be running all of your HR processes, your sales and marketing, your finance, all within one one solution. Along came Salesforce, Workday, ServiceNow, Anaplan. The list goes on, and we saw that more sort of, I guess, domain focused SaaS solutions, and the business ultimately end up getting the solutions they want. But what it's meant is that data is more spread out across the organization than ever. And part of what we do is bringing all of that together.
Yes.
Into a single place. But I guess data governance spans all of those sources. It spans your data platform, all of the SharePoint and Excel spreadsheets across your organization. I mean, data is everywhere, and data is the fundamental driver now, isn't it?
Yes.
For business growth. It really is
right.
is a fuel for growth, for innovation. So, in fact, the whole theme of the Gartner Data and AI event this year was AI-ready data.
Yes.
So as a data governance practitioner, what does AI-ready data mean to you?
So I was really pleased to see what came out of that summit, but I'm going to sound like a real broken record here because data governance, and to be AI ready, it really comes down to the basics, the fundamentals of data governance, and that is that you've got to have data that is well structured. It's got to be accessible, and it's got to be trustworthy. And you've got to have those basics in place for any AI model to be able to generate accurate and ethical and actual data insights. There's some really good key takeaways actually from that summit that highlight those really critical points. They emphasised you've got to have good data quality and integrity. So as we know, all AI models, they've got to work off of clean data. It's that old adage, bad data in, bad data out. You've got to also have really good metadata management as well. That's what's really key. People often overlook that. You've got to also think about having excellent data privacy and compliance in place as well, because to be AI ready, you've got to make sure that you're GDPR compliant or CCPA. There's a whole host of regulatory compliance modules out there that are focusing on maintaining ethical AI practices. So it's really key. You've got to ensure that your infrastructure is scalable and accessible as well for AI. So AI models really need real-time access to data to be able to work effectively. And then it's all about embracing tooling. As I said before, there's a lot of really good AI automated tools out there that are great for sort of policy enforcement, really good for anomaly detection, and also for good data classification. So those were the real big key takeaways, which really emphasises everything I've been saying over the years as to why data governance is really, really important.
Yeah, and the tooling's an interesting one, because tooling is now starting to do things that I've always historically said you can't rely on a tool to do this. And you still can't rely on a tool to do it, but AI is now able to do data classification. It's able to identify and create alerts where there are maybe some security challenges, maybe around PII data. It can start to tag and flag those things. So actually bringing, as well as having AI-ready data, AI can help you to get your data ready, I think is an increasing trend that we're seeing. For me, you still need a human in that loop to check and validate that AI is giving you the right information.
Yeah, I think the tooling is there to try and improve the efficiency for the business, but you still got to have the understanding about what do you want to achieve? What are you looking to do with your data? What are the problems with the data? Because and we can go on and talk about that. A lot of people end up thinking the tooling is going to be the solution to every problem. Actually, it's not. Okay, it's part of the solution, but people still need to be there and understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, look, data governance is often a term that is used now in lots of organizations, and I've heard it used in many different contexts. But how would you describe data governance to someone that's fairly new to the topic? Maybe that difficult stakeholder that doesn't think they need to invest in this area, and I'm sure you will have come across some of those, is like, well, data governance isn't something that really matters to me. And kind of, that stakeholder that kind of says, what is it and why should I care? Well, how would you sort of present to them?
I actually love this question, and I never get bored of answering it, because it means either someone is really interested in data governance or they're interested to know what I do for a living. So either one is really good for me. And I tend to tailor the response accordingly to who's asking. In short, data governance is all about setting those ground rules of how you're handling data within a business. You've got to make sure that your data within a business is accurate, it's secure, and it's used responsibly. And I tend to break them down. I tend to use analogies as well. So you've got data security, which is one pillar within data governance. So that is all around who has access to that data. Now, we've all got a home, we all live somewhere. And so you've got to be thinking about, well, who's got the keys to my house? You've got to be thinking that way, okay? And it's only going to be a certain select people that you're going to be able to trust with that. You've also got data quality, which is absolutely key. And again, data quality, we all have to cook. If you're using bad ingredients, poor data quality, poor ingredients, you're not going to get a good result. So you've got to have good data quality. You've got compliance as well. So regulation is a bit like driving on the motorway. Okay, you've got to adhere to the rules of the road, and you've got to adhere to the speed cameras. So there you've got your sort of compliance. And then you've got accessibility as well. So data needs to be accessible. And I often use like a library for this. You go into a library, it's all very well presented, you know exactly what you're looking for. So they're the sort of key pillars of data governance: so accessibility, compliance, data quality, and data security.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because accessibility kind of sounds counterintuitive to security, but I guess the idea being that if data isn't accessible to the people that need it, they will go and find it.
Correct.
And they will find a workaround. Normally that workaround will be Excel. And you will then have PII sensitive data flying around the organization on an ungoverned Excel spreadsheet.
Yes.
Is that the sort of idea around actually part of governance is making it accessible to the right people at the right time?
You're absolutely right. It doesn't mean to say that you're going to completely restrict data for people to use. It means that the right people have access to the right data that they need to do their job. As you've rightly pointed out, otherwise you'll end up creating silos of data. And that's, you create these UDAs. People then use Excel. They then don't share the knowledge. They don't share the data. But having data that is accessible, but also to the right people, you can then put layers over the top of that data. So, you're making sure that the right people and the right team still have access, but they're just using the right data for their job.
Yeah, so I worked in an organization once where we had sort of these multiple layers of encryption on the new solution. And the organization said, no, you've only got 2 layers of encryption. We want 3 layers. Now, the interesting thing was the existing solution was on an Excel spreadsheet, which was pretty much universally accessible across the whole organization. And we were talking about that 3rd tier of encryption that wasn't there. And I found that quite ironic that it was like, We've come to this solution which is vastly more secure and controlled and governed, and actually today it is just it's an Excel spreadsheet that anyone has access to. So I think, look, hey, I think it's good that organisation were moving in the right direction and asking the right questions in fairness, but I think that maturity can vary greatly, right? Yeah. So. If I'm in a large organization and part of my role is around data and I want to improve the data governance, the data kind of, the maturity in that organization, where should I begin on that journey? Because, you've talked about lots of different areas, right? It's a broad space, accessibility and security and quality, and we talked previously about metadata. So there's it's complex. Where would you suggest organizations begin on this journey?
No, you're absolutely right. Well, firstly, obviously, that's why we're here. So point number one.
Thanks. I love a plug.
Absolutely. Look, data governance, it is hard to think about in its entirety, but you've just got to get started. It does require a structured approach. You've got to be very structured because you need to ensure that data is going to be managed effectively. It needs to be secure and it needs to be compliant. So there's a few sort of step-by-step guides that will always sort of take people through. First of all, a company, you need to define your goals. You need to understand what the problems are. So do you want to try and improve your data quality? Do you need to become more compliant in terms of the legislations? Or is it just that you want improved decision making? So you've got to be thinking about defining your goals, first of all. After you've got your goals, then you need to gain executive support. And this is absolutely key because, as you rightly said, you need to sell the dream, okay, to execs. It's one of those things, again, what's the value add? Actually, the value add is huge if you get it right, but it is going to take a bit of time. So you've got to get that executive support. Once you've got that, then you can start to think about establishing your data governance framework. That's when you start to look at data ownership, data stewardship. You can then start to set up your policies around data access, your security and your compliance. Then, and only at that point, then you should start to have a look at your tools. So start to think about what tools you actually need. So you started to go through, think about what your goals are, what you need to try and achieve. You've got that support, you've got your framework. Now you can start to look at the tools, which is one of the key things. Then once you've got the tools, you need to broadcast this. You need to start to educate and you need to bring everybody along on that journey. Data governance cannot work in a silo. data governance needs teams to work with them and actually drive all of this forward. That comes from everyone from IT to engineering to cyber, architecture. They can't work in a silo. It is a big collaboration. So big collaboration gets data governance pushed forward.
And I guess even the as well, the business functions are going to play a core part of that. The finance teams, the HR teams, the sales and marketing teams who are collecting customer information. Just understanding, what is it and why are we doing it, and why does it matter?
Yes,
is going to be really, really important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and you talked about getting buy-in. Historically, it's just an area that is very difficult to get buy-in and investment for, and it's big and it's complex. But I think the payoff ultimately can be really significant, right? Because it is, particularly in the era of AI, because without governed data, without high quality data, you've talked about quality, without controlled data, AI is going to spit out nonsense. Your organization is probably going to be making bad decisions. It's probably better not to do AI at all than do bad AI in a lot of cases, right?
Yes.
Without well-controlled, well-secured data, that it's going to, I guess, bring a lot of commercial risk into the organization, reputational risk and damage. So I think it's going to be I think AI certainly brings an interesting angle to this, and I think the other thing with AI is that there's going to be much broader adoption of data within organizations. I think right now we build the data platform, we build the 20 Power BI reports, and 15% of the business are using it. With AI, you're going to be able to ask a question and get an answer about pretty much any data. So that's going to be really important, that you understand what you're feeding the AI.
Correct.
And who should have access and who's asking what questions.
Spot on.
So I think it's going to be a really interesting time in this space. What would you say are the top sort of maybe 2 or 3 sort of best practices that you would really sort of encourage organizations to think about?
Absolutely. So we've already spoken about those key objectives. You've got to lead with a clear purpose. You've got to know exactly what you're trying to drive and deliver, which is absolutely key, because with data governance, it's all about the value add. And that's what the execs like to see. They want to see value. So you've got to lead with clear purpose. You need to change the mindset as well. You've got to be thinking about treating data as an actual data product. Okay, it isn't, it's not just data governance is a service. You've got to be thinking about what we're here to do, and we are treating data as an asset to the business. It needs to be considered as I say, it's more of an approach, a change in mindset. You've got to embed and embrace collaboration for data governance. That is absolutely key. As we've already spoken about, data governance cannot exist in a silo. It has to be there in partnership with everyone across the business. Look at automation as well, because you said to get started, especially around data quality and data validation, a lot of people get really scared because it's huge. And especially if you've got an enterprise where you've got a lot of data and it is in a bit of a mess. You think, how do I get started? Look at trying to automate some of those processes. Start small and then you can build big. Okay. Also invest in the right technology. Too often we see people will go and get a tool because they've been told that this is right for the business. But you need to understand, first of all, what is your end goal? What are your solutions? What are your problems with the data within your enterprise? Once you've really got under the hood of that, then you can then go, because there's a plethora of tools out there, but you've got to make sure it is the right one for you and for the business as you take it forward.
Yeah, I see this as a common mistake across a number of different areas, right? They're called solutions, right? So to deliver a solution, you need to understand the problem.
Yes.
And then they often come backwards. And I think, look, the vendors are very good at selling these things and selling the dream and selling the vision, right?
Yes.
And you go to Gartner, you go to Big Data London, and you see all these amazing tools. And, there are some incredible tools out there, but I guess it has to be the right tool for for your organisation to solve those specific problems.
Absolutely, and it's always better, as you say, you know what the problems are. You can then invite the vendors in, and I encourage everyone to be very, very picky and driven with regards to what that tooling is going to actually give them in the long run. That's what's really, really important. Short term, fine, need to think about, is it going to work for us as a business as we scale and drive everything forward? Absolutely key.
And I also guess it really varies depending on the organisation, what those priorities are. I guess, there can be a temptation to say, hey, come in and give me, a off-the-shelf data governance program, right? And actually, it does need to be tailored to that organisation, because if you're in a highly regulated, organisation, banking, maybe the wealth management space increasingly as well, I think you would have a different risk tolerance than if you're a grocery store. I think so. So I just think it's that right sizing is important, right?
Yes, because then you've got costs as well. And, all of this stuff is going to cost. And it's depending on the size of the business, obviously it's going to cost more. But, I always say to people as well, get under the hood. Roll up the sleeves, get your hands dirty with the data. We all love to play with SQL or sort of other tools that are out there that we can actually start to analyse the data ourselves, really start to build out, what the actual problems are, and then you can then think about that tool to actually then come in and be the saviour.
Yeah, fantastic. So we are, of course, a data business, and the security of our clients' information is absolutely vital. What are some of the data risks that these organizations face, and what are the things they can do to really protect their data?
So this comes down to data privacy, and you've only got to see recently there was an incident where a famous supermarket was hacked. Again, this all boils down to having good data security and data privacy in place, which is absolutely key. Too often we think about what would we do in the case of a data breach. Okay, so you'll then have your sort of protocols in place to say, right, this is what we're going to do. What you need to do is really step back from that. You've got to think about how secure your network is. You can't just take for granted about putting everything into cloud, it's all going to be secure. You've still got to think about data accessibility, who has access to that data. You've also got to be thinking about the legitimate use of PII as well, which is absolutely critical. That's what GDPR is there. Too often, businesses will just harness data ad infinitum. But actually, it is very, very clear from GDPR, you've got to have a legitimate reason to store data, whether that be for marketing purposes or you've actually sold a product. You can't retain that data ad infinitum. It's like a sort of a law of reasonableness there. So it's about sort of 7 years. And people also want to be forgotten. So everyone has the right to phone up and say, I want you to forget me. So you've got 30 days in which to act on that. So you've got to be very conscious about the data that you've got, the data that you've stored, and also the integrity of that data. How accurate is that data? All of that adds in to the element of making sure that all of that data is extremely secure and that you don't get hacked in any particular way. And you've also got to be thinking about this 24/7. You can't just put things in place and think it's all going to be okay. You've got to constantly monitor and constantly cycle. And this comes down from everything from just tooling, but also having the first and second and third line of defense. Okay, everyone that works for the business, as you all know, inside of threat and outside of threat, there's a whole array of things that companies need to think about in terms of data security and data privacy.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, isn't it? I think that recent hack that you referred to is probably going to create a lot of concern in the industry. Yes. I think probably if you went out and did an audit of, the FTSE 250, you would probably find that 70-80% of them are actually fairly low in terms of maturity. Is that a fair kind of estimate?
I would absolutely agree with that. A lot of people will say that they've got an okay data governance framework, but what we do as a business, and which I encourage everybody to do, is to go forward and do a data maturity assessment. And this is when you engage the enterprise. So this isn't just one or two individuals. We promote speaking to 20, 30, 40, 50 SMEs around the business and also senior stakeholders. We then help, and the data maturity assessment will help evaluate what the appetite is around how we think we're progressing with data, what our data sort of looks like. Do we have vision around data? Are we advanced in terms of our data literacy? And it helps give that sort of point of where you are on the journey. So a lot of companies and ourselves as well, I like to use the scale of 1 to 5, where 1, you're at the start of the journey. 5, you're knocking it out of the park. You're a market leader. You're a sort of Microsoft or Google house, okay? A lot of people tend to think, no, well, I think we're at 3. Whereas actually when you conduct these assessments, and also with those assessments, we do a complete analysis of the data governance frameworks, have a look at their policies and procedures and processes. Quite often, when the results come in, they're more towards sort of 1 3/4 to 2. And it becomes a little bit of a shock to businesses when you play this back. But you give them reasons as to why actually they are at this point. But the important thing is what needs to change at this point to push that forward. So you're absolutely right. It does become a little bit of a shock to people when we do a full analysis of everything and then present those results to try and help drive that forward.
And I think the point to going out to the wider business is really important because you can have, it might be that the enterprise IT team, the CIO says, hey, we've got fantastic data governance policies and processes in place. But if Sharon in marketing's got an Excel spreadsheet with all your customers on that she runs a load of macros on every week, all of that kind of, is not that helpful, right?
Yes.
Because there is still a weak link in the chain, right? And it's kind of what we see across a lot of big enterprises is that, they've got the 200-page data governance policy, but actually, is it being implemented? Is it being applied across the organization? Do people even know it exists?
Yes.
Often not, right?
And that's one of the key things as well. So we often talk about having a data governance council. And the Data Governance Council is there for your senior stakeholders to come to the business to say, this is what I'm responsible for, this is what I'm accountable for in terms of the policies and the processes there. But then you have to go further down. Okay, you then got to create your forums because it's really important that message and those forums are out to the wider business, because you can have these policies that are created, but unless they're pushed out, unless they're acted upon, unless they're monitored, it doesn't mean anything. And so I really do encourage every business, if you're going along that data governance road, create your data governance councils, get everything set in place, and then broadcast it. Get it out there, bring everybody in the journey, get representatives from across the business into those forums. As you said, everyone from HR to the ops, everyone needs to be part of it, because then everyone will be part of that journey in terms of driving forward better data quality.
Fantastic. Well, Martin, it's been such an interesting conversation. And as I said at the beginning, the AI and data space is growing exponentially right now, and I think we're really seeing that pivot back from hype back to the reality of, if we do not have well-governed, well-controlled, high-quality data, we're never going to get to that sort of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And I think it's great to see someone who's so enthusiastic about data governance and rare. I think my wife says the same about me with data and analytics and AI. She sort of, why do you get so enthusiastic and excitable about this stuff? Whenever anyone asks at a party what I do, she sort of says, don't ask him, please. So yeah, look, it's great to see someone who's like-minded. We like to end with something that's a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more fun.
Yep.
So can you tell us something that people might not know about you?
Oh, okay. Well, there's two good key facts that I'll share. I love a mic, and I used to be a DJ. And I don't know if you stopped being a DJ. I used to be a professional DJ, so I used to get paid for that. Never went to the heights of going to Ibiza, sadly. I don't think I was that good, but I used to be a DJ. I still will now do some small, intimate gigs when I get asked. So I still love that.
We might get a mates rates on the next company party. Then.
Exactly. I would love that. And as part of a bet with my children, to try and drive their sort of attention to detail and really get them to focus on something, I said to them, look, if you guys can learn and play a song on an instrument of your choice, I'll do whatever you want me to do next. And 2 weeks ago, I bought my first skateboard at the ripe age of 51.
Wow.
And I have been down to the local skate park the last 2 weeks. Now, I would say that my daughter is now teaching me, although she's also only been doing it for 2 weeks, but I'm embracing a new hobby.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to your sick note. And, when you break your arm, hopefully that won't happen. Well, that's very insightful. But listen, it's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Lovely. Thank you very much for having me, Dave.
Thank you so much for listening to the Snap, Crackle and Pod podcast. Please click this button to subscribe on YouTube. You can also follow us on all major podcast platforms. We're Snap Analytics. We help organizations make sense of data. If you want to find out more, you can go to www.snapanalytics.co.uk. Thank you.